One of you, those of you who either want to buy an airplane for the club or buy an airplane for yourself, the first thing you want to do is you want to build some relationships, and that's been covered a little bit, but I'm going to just highlight that. Build some relationships with some AMPs, build some relationships with the hangar folks, get yourself on the list. It's like when you're looking for daycare, you better get yourself on the list when you're 2 months pregnant. Okay, if you're thinking about getting a hangar, go get yourself on the list now. All my planes are either hangared or sheltered, and that took a year sometimes in the making to make happen. And then my final piece of advice to you is there are various sayings, some more derogatory and others, about buying versus renting things that can be, with relationships and boats and things like that, right? Don't buy something you can rent. But I'm going to fly it. So no, you're not. Okay, if you can rent it, don't freaking buy it. It's stupid. And that's why the airplanes I have are things that I just couldn't rent. And before Brian and I showed up, there was no aerobatic airplanes. There were a few tail draggers, but nothing aerobatic. So that's why we own what we own, because we couldn't rent it. Okay, and that's my advice to you. Any questions? Let me know.
Hi guys. I think most of you know who I am. I'm Dave Gordon. I currently have 7 airplanes in the club. I own 3 others that are not in the club. 2 of them will never be in the club. One's a J3 Cub I own with Tom. The other's an RV4 that is a kick in the pants to fly, and I'm not letting anybody else fly that except my partners. But I've got 5 172s in the club, 4 that I own myself, 1 the 180 horse 7.5 Foxtrot I own with a partner. I've got 1/4 of, I'm not sure which 1/4 of 6 Romeo Alpha that I own with Tom, and 2 other partners you probably have never met, because, are you guys still here?
Yeah, Don and John, why
Yeah.
don't you guys stand up, because you guys are part owners in that airplane too. Chadwick, former president of Plus One and owner of 756 Romeo Alpha. John Sanders, where are you? There he is,
And
CFII.
each of these airplanes have a different mission, except for and then the 4 172s I have. So what Miko said about don't buy something you can rent. Well, I initially started buying 172s and turning them into something I couldn't rent. Now I've got other owners, because I tried to make them nicer, make them something that people want to rent, and I think it's working. And now I've got other owners trying to copy me, and that's great, because the more good 172s we have in the club, the better off we are. I frequently hear comments about how great my airplanes are, and I have to give credit to Aeromechanics. David Long and Aeromechanics is why my airplanes are in the shape they're in, and they're responsive. I mean, David works 7 days a week, and we're constantly taking care of trying to fix things. And that's something, as an owner, if you want to be an owner, particularly of a trainer airplane, be ready to have your phone on constant ringing. I finally had to put mine on Do Not Disturb for part of the night, because people seem to not care what time they call. But you want to get those calls, but then we get the calls, but not, then we have, I think it's a millennial thing. They don't want to call. We want to text. We want to put it in Schedule Master in a Squawk, but I don't want to talk about it. Might have to answer a question, but you want to get the calls, but it'd be nice if you could filter the calls. But it's just part of doing the business. Along with that, if you think you're going to put an airplane in the club, and it doesn't matter whether it's a trainer or anything else, as Tom said, you can't be an absentee owner. There are a handful that have tried it and are trying that. One guy recently hired somebody else to manage his airplanes because he's never around. Your own airplane, so you can see for yourself what's being complained about. Because it's one of the fix ANP. Be careful. I forget who said it about. This was Brian said, yeah, you take it there. You want to make sure you go over with the shop exactly what you want them to do, because if you just give them a blank checkbook, they will make it a blank checkbook. There's a great article a month ago in AOPA's magazine, written by Mike Bush, talking about a flight school owner who bought a Beech 18, and Not, the whole story's not there, but he took it up to Northern California, and because there was something happened to his airplane when he landed it, it's in this shop up there. It's been there, I think, for 15 months. His again. Mike goes in a whole maintenance guys running around the airplane. Stay away from those guys too. Guy working out of the trunk of his car, doesn't have insurance, be careful. Another big part mentioned by others, fuel costs. For my 4 172s, my fuel cost is running about going back out. And unfortunately, with the price was over $8 a gallon for a while, it's a part of reality. Another thing related to maintenance, since we've come out of the COVID thing, everybody hears about the supply chain issues. It's hit aviation tremendously. There was a couple months there you could not get a tire for an airplane. They just were not available. And then it was batteries. No batteries available. I was able to get a couple here the last couple months, but that's a dicey game. I brought some show and tell. So I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about tonight, but I have some, before I get into the details, I have some rules I request that you follow. Keep the feet off the brakes. This was a tire from a couple weeks ago. It's got one down to the cord, cord, and another one down to the cord on the same tire. Send it. It happens all the time. They did repeal that FAR that said you have to make the first turn off. And what are they about? And I think they're 100 and something. Plus a tube is another 80. Plus a couple hours of mechanics time. Yeah, it's not cheap. Yeah, and I've done shop. I have a spare engine, some things, but it never seems to work the way you want it to. It seems to me that some people seem to think that, if it doesn't move, push or pull harder, please don't do that. Airplanes are fragile. Rosin visor, it doesn't move. Oh, let me pull harder. That's why it's in multiple pieces. Somebody recently, if you look at the rosin visors, there's some metal brackets. Somebody managed to even break the metal bracket. I don't know how the hell you do that. Doors, the doors on an airplane are really flimsy. Don't push so hard. Don't slam them. And then my favorite one is the seats. I regularly get people say, I couldn't move the seat today. I said, did you check, the raise and lower thing? Crank them some more, and now they're jammed in the seat track. You get in and try and move that seat, it will not move. Uncrank it a little. There's just, again, don't push harder. More is not better. 5 quarts of oil is good. 8 quarts is probably too much. Anything excess, depending on the engine over a certain level, it just blows it all out the breather. They're not sophisticated engines. They're not like your Toyota, your Porsche. They were designed in the 1940s. And then, kind of treat the things in the airplane a little bit nicer. This used to be the cover of the POH in one of my planes.
Dave, we're going to go to questions here in a second. We got
Okay.
about.
Yeah, I got a couple more quick things.
Make it really quick.
Okay, this used to be the little light thing on top. Somebody glued a GoPro mount on there and then yanked it off. Better. In the airplane. Take your stuff with you. Batteries especially. They don't belong in the side pockets. There are places to dispose of them. But like I said, just, try to keep, that airplane, if you treat the airplane nice, it'll treat you nice. I'll treat you nicer too if you treat it nice. And then the one last thing, came out to my airplane and my student was, I got out here and this airplane was just a mess and the control lock was in backwards. And I noticed a friend of mine who's a senior CFI was flying, and I called him up and said, hey, did you happen to stick around when your student was post-flight? And he says, it wasn't a student, it was a CFI I was checking out. That CFI didn't know how to put the control in correctly and assess. I asked the airport on the east instead of left onto Alpha. So those are the frustrations you're going to get if you're being an airplane owner.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions now. So if anyone has any questions, Dave's going to walk around with a mic. Just raise your hand and speak into the mic, please, for the folks that are listening online. And then
All right.
we'll
Hands
pass
up.
the mic around over here. Tom, you already have a mic, so we'll just pass
I
it around.
imagine at least one of you have your airplane in an LLC. So, Tom, I guess it's directed to you, Tom.
Yeah.
Pros and cons of LLC for ownership and lease back to the club.
I put it in an LLC because of the definition of an LLC. It limits my liability. Also because you can change partners without paying sales tax. That's the most important thing.
And any advice on how to set that up or?
Email me and I'll send you my LLC agreement, my operating agreement. It's not top secret or anything. I think you can probably set it up pretty cheaply. I'm lucky to have, at the time we had an attorney as a partner. He set it up for us. So it's basic. Really
There's
easy.
one small downside to the LLC thing is, you pay property taxes on your airplane. I don't know if you know this. And if it's an LLC, certain airplanes that are over so many years old, which is most airplanes nowadays, you can display at display days and you get a tax break on it.
That's a great point. So if you're going to buy an older airplane,
Right.
and you put it in an LLC, you can't get the property taxes waived. The other thing is you're going to pay $800 to the state every year, and you're going to pay your accountant at least that to prepare your LLC tax returns. So the downsides are a little more paperwork and a little more expense, and the property taxes.
One other point, you can do an LLC or an S corp. I'm not an accountant, but I did talk to an accountant, and she said if you're just one person, an S corp's better because if you own the whole LLC, you have to pay yourself more of a salary than you do in an S corp. Which don't ask me details because I don't understand it.
Not like we're gonna make any money anyway.
No, we don't. I've never had to do that. I'm a single member LLC.
Do you show a loss every year?
No, not some. Yeah.
I have mine in an S corp, but I'm a single owner,
Yeah.
so, just talk to your tax person.
Yeah.
Most tax
Yeah.
people will be able to set it up for you. It's really easy.
On the point of, I think AOPA kind of wrote about it, but basically under LLC, you can pierce the veil if you as the owner aren't maintaining the plane in a way that makes it operationally safe. So how do you kind of think and deal with those sort of concerns?
I maintain the airplane to my standards, which I think are higher than are required by law, and you can do what you can do. I mean,
Also, we both use a shop, an established shop that they carry a pretty large insurance policy, as opposed to, like I said, I know of owners that try and do the work themselves, and they use their buddy who works out of the trunk of his car and doesn't have insurance. Having the right mechanic. Yeah, having the right shop who's insured. We had an issue years ago with the club where had a guy working out of the trunk. The club got sued, and because he put the wrong alternator on the airplane, and it would turn into a huge lawsuit.
Well, that's a bigger story than
Yeah.
what we're
But
talking about,
I
so
think-
let's not go down that tangent.
if I can add to that, though, the club has weathered many lawsuits, and we've had, fortunately, a couple of fatalities where it wasn't the club's fault. The incident down at Brown Field is a good
Yeah, the
example.
midair.
Midair was the controller's fault, but the club's insurance has always held up. So in what, 30 years of multi-hours of flying and many incidents, they and our legal.
This is a question for. I'm a non-US citizen, and if I buy an airplane and I want to register and get an N number, are any of you in such a situation, like where you register a corp and then register the aircraft to that corp? So if you don't, that's fine. But
I think I can answer your question. You can certainly form a corporation and then put, when you register the airplane, the registration is going to show XYZ Corporation as the owner of the airplane.
The FAA will make you prove citizenship of the corporation.
You can be a shareholder of an S corporation just by being a resident but not a citizen. So it's residency, not citizenship. So that solves your problem.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for speaking to us. I'm a student and I rented a plane. This was in the pre-COVID days. And I was, keep in mind, brand new student, and I screwed up and the oil went in the wrong direction. And I reported it, my instructor reported it, and that seemed to be all there was for that day. And we were told we could still fly if we wanted to, and my instructor elected not to fly. She thought it was not a good idea. Then fast forwarding a little bit later, my instructor was charged $300 some automatically on her credit card for the oil that I missed. And I reached out to the club repeatedly, and I was not responded to in any way. And that really frustrated me, because as a student, I'm going to screw up. And nothing was hidden or covered up in any way. It was reported immediately. So I would like to know why I wasn't responded to and how that kind of thing can be handled. Yes, Sierra X-ray.
Everybody point at Dave.
Yeah, you got to give me the parameters of it. That's not an owner thing. That's an operation. No, I responded to 172 X-ray. You had the oil change? Yeah, that was, I sent you off to the owners, and the owners are responsible for that. That's not the club. So you have to reach out to Aero Mechanics. You have. Well, see, this is the thing. The club leases from the owners. The owners, per the lease, are responsible for all the maintenance and everything that goes down with the aircraft. What you had was a maintenance issue with the airplane. That's an owner's responsibility. The club doesn't handle any of that. And I told you you could file an IDP claim for the $300, and I sent you the link for it.
Oh, okay, that I didn't get.
Yeah, because I sent you the link, and I said you can file a claim.
I will find your message or I'll get it again now.
Just send me an email, and I'll give you the link again.
That's a perfect use for IDP.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
But the reason that they billed you, that's them, not me. They billed me, and I bill you. That's how it works.
So let's have a little more detail on that, because the IDP pays for things that are above and beyond normal wear and tear. So if you pour oil all over the engine, which is actually pretty common, and the engine has to be washed, so there's a couple hours of maintenance and downtime and all that, so $300, fairly reasonable. The owner says, hey, that's not normal wear and tear. So the club will bill you, or the responsible party for it. The responsible party can then turn around and say, hey, I'm going to make an IDP claim. And then if it's deemed that this is an acceptable use of IDP funds, you'll get reimbursed.
Okay, because the owner did not respond to me or my teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
No, I know that incident. Yeah, and that's when I said, and they said, nope, we're not paying it. And they
So busy. They're busy. One-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. They're just
Yeah, I mean,
Fair.
and that's it. They
so
owners send me a bill, they get paid.
yeah.
People do that and fly and burn it off. So
Yeah, and they do. Yeah.
I felt like I was super honest and I got screwed. So and
No good deed goes unpunished sometimes.
That's right.
it embarrassed
Here comes the bus.
The better question is, are you ever going to spill oil on another engine?
Never.
There, see? Learning is taking place.
I'll just say it loud because I have a loud voice. Maybe you could tell a story about how you went through the appraisal and negotiation of a plane that you were interested in buying. I looked into this at one point and tried to VREF. I got a very, what I thought was market fair estimate. But the market's kind of was crazy then. And of course you're dealing with an owner, and an owner may have a love of the plane and a certain value in mind. And I just kind of want your personal story of like how you thought through that process, how you came up with your number, maybe how you negotiated with them, and just something around that.
I'll answer that.
Yeah, go for it.
So when I bought my plane, the owner wanted to sell it for, I can't remember how much. But I didn't want to pay that how much. And so I just said to him, well, this is what I'm going to pay. We negotiated it 4 times, and we came to a number. I told him it's cash, and he's like, oh, that's even better, okay, great. But I'm telling everybody right now, if you're thinking that you're going to spend $100,000 on a plane because that's what you can buy it for, believe me when I say this, if you're going to buy the plane for $100,000, in the first year, you're going to spend another 50.
Yeah.
Getting it airworthy. Because I don't care if you're buying it from your mother, mama's still lying to you.
So when we replaced 3 Bravo Whiskey, we had 2 choices. We were looking at airplanes that were above 200,000, 250,000 that had everything already fixed, upgraded avionics, paint, interior, and everything. Or we were looking at the bottom end of something that we would have to do everything to. And it was in California City. It'd been flowing from California City to the Bay Area like twice a month for the last 20 years. And it only had a couple owners. And it was $60,000, right? What did we pay? Everything. So then we put a new engine in, we put new avionics, a new interior, new paint, and so now we have like $275,000 in the airplane. So there's 2 ways to go, and you just take whatever estimate you get, throw out the high one, throw out the low one, and take the middle one, multiply it by your phone number, and that's what it's really going to cost.
So my tip, you asked what can you do to negotiate, and my tip for you is related to that. You'll often see guys list their airplanes and they say, don't worry, it comes with a... And never, ever, ever buy an airplane where somebody else, the seller, has just done the annual, right? Ideally, your perfect time is when the airplane has just expired out of annual or it's about to, right? You look at the listing, the annual's up. Because what that means is you can take your A&P, right, a guy that you, like Miko said, built a relationship with, right, and you have him do or her do the annual on the airplane. During that process, you'll uncover some squawks. Every annual, you're going to get a list, right? Your mechanic comes back, it's called a discrepancy list. They produce a discrepancy list. They say, listen, here's 17 things that are wrong with the airplane. The first one is, the left wing is missing. We got to fix that before the airplane flies, right? Some of them will be lesser, like, the visor is cracked above the co-pilot seat, right? That's not an airworthiness item, so you can defer that. But what that list gives you when you have your own A&P do it, you get that list, then you go back to the owner or the seller, right? And you say, listen, man, my mechanic found 17 things wrong. 2 of the cylinders, the cross hatching is all gone, and it's likely going to burn oil. I'm going to need to replace those cylinders soon. So I'm going to need to take $5 or $6 grand off of the price, right? And then the seller will come back and say, yeah, okay, I'll cover half of that. And that's how you kind of work the price down, right? What you need is ammunition. And you get ammunition by having your own mechanic do an independent annual. Never buy an airplane where the seller has managed the annual, because what he did is he told his A&P, listen, man, I'm getting rid of this thing. Just check the boxes. Let's just get it out the door, right?
It's either the right price for it. If you're looking to buy a $150,000 Cessna and it's listed for $200,000, so where's your time?
Yeah, and forget VREF. Get a subscription to, get free online subscription to Trade a Plane. Start watching the airplanes you're really interested in. That will give you the best idea of what they're worth. And then you got to go through and figure out this one's got crappy avionics, this one's got new avionics. For when I was buying 172s, I'm kind of stopped for now, but I'd look for ones with still had the original 1979 panel in it, because I know I'm going to put the money into the panel and get what I want. If you get one that's, they put new avionics in it 5 years ago, it's all obsolete.
Yeah.
But you're going to pay what people are willing to pay, and you might find yourself in a bidding war. When I bought the Duchess last year, I was watching them. I found this one. It's like, oh man, I want to go see this. I literally the next day I was on an airplane flying to Colorado Springs, and by the time I got there were 3 other people chomping at the bit to buy it. It was a low time. It was in good shape. I'm still put a lot of money into it after the fact, but.
Oh, okay, moving on, guys. Moving on. Hang on. I'm coming over to you guys. Hold up. I got you next. Okay.
So if I call you about a squawk or potential squawk, do I have to write it up? Okay, I told my student to write it up one time, and he didn't do that, but I felt, nah, let it pass.
As an owner, I prefer you call me, tell me what it's about. Oftentimes I'll get it.
You'll resolve it. You'll resolve the issue, yeah.
And you write a squawk in the squawk system that, puts all this stuff out there. And oftentimes, especially if a student write it, they don't know what they're writing.
I got a quickie other one here.
Before you move on, from that question.
This is quick.
No, I know, but I don't want to go back to your first question. So, for these owners, don't write it up. There's
Okay,
some
I like
owners.
that.
For
I
some
really like
owners,
that.
you got to write it up because they won't do anything about it.
Okay. Now, the other quick one was one time, 15 years ago, I saw a little dripping out of the fuel tank. And I was told by the owner to just move it a bit and you could fly it. What do you think?
If it stopped dripping, then fly it. If it didn't stop dripping, then don't fly it.
Was it a vent dripping or was it something else?
It was just a little.
The drain.
The fuel drain, right?
Where you take the test.
Yeah,
Where you test the fuel.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
shook
you
it a few times and it seemed like it stopped.
You're the pilot in command. If you're not comfortable flying it, you don't have to fly it.
I was okay after the owner talked to me.
Okay.
But what do you think?
Yeah.
On that sample point, sometimes they get a little piece of crud in there, and you stick the tester up in it a few times, you can get it to stop. Just get the dirt out of the seat, and it'll stop dripping.
Okay.
But, every situation, that specific thing, but there's any situation where it's not explained to your comfort level, you have the option of not flying. I had a guy call me, brand new CFI, said, hey, there's a cowl fastener missing on the cowl. There's 31 fasteners on there. I said,
no problem with that.
well, and I told him, I said, it's your prerogative. If you don't want to fly it, you don't have to fly it. I would have no problem flying it. We'll get it addressed as soon as you get back.
Cool.
Dave, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, go
When
ahead.
you get write-ups as an owner, I really do prefer the call. I got somebody wrote up the flap, heard a noise and the flap sounded funny, so we ground it. I go down there and look at it myself, and so if you negotiate with me, I'll try to get more information. I need somebody like a second opinion. So the next person went down there and said, oh yeah, flap track's broken. But let me then negotiate with my mechanics to see what I need to do to fix it. But I need more information on how to write it up, not just some note in the logbook on Schedule Master. It's really important for me to be more accurate about that.
Yeah.
And one other thing about engine oil, I recycle the oil. I have a 55-gallon drum, so I put it all in there. I keep 2 quarts in the airplane all the time. I put 8 quarts in with a filter, but when you check the oil the first time, it's going to say 6. So it's got 8 in there. So please don't ever top off over 6. 5 is just fine.
Before since we're talking about squawks, let me give you the official answer because I don't want anyone to take the wrong information out of here. So the way the ops rules are written, you got to call the owner first. That's in the ops rules. Okay. No one will ever tell you not to squawk something. Okay, that we can't tell you not to squawk something. I don't want you to go into the FSDO and saying, hey, they told me not to write this up. If you are going to write it up, then that's your prerogative. Now, you may get a phone call afterward asking, like Denny says, what's going on. And Denny can, and any of the other airline guys in here can attest to this, but there's no airline pilot that's going to just start, hey, look, this thing is broken. I'm just going to start typing stuff. No, you call the maintenance people and you say, hey, look, this is what's going on. And they'll walk you through some things usually, and they'll say, look, this is what you should write up. Okay? We see a lot of squawks that are they're ridiculous because, like Danny said, there's no information there. So a lot of times, if there's no information and we go out and say, well, I mean, based on what they wrote, it's fine. We couldn't reproduce the issue. Then we're going to clear the squawk. That's why you call the owner first, talk to the owner, and if you're satisfied with what they say, that's it. You don't need to write it up. But don't take what you hear here is don't ever write anything up in the system because we don't want you to. Does that make sense?
On mine, if I get a call from you and it needs to be written up, I'll tell them, I'll write the squawk because I know I can write it where I know the airplane probably better than most everybody. The other thing too, it's okay to have your student call, but stand there and coach them. There's an instructor who used to have his students call me regularly and say, hey, is he there? No, he went to lunch. And the poor student is just hanging, doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. He's just parroting back what his instructor said. You own the student and help them out, help them be successful. Him or her.
Okay, I'd like to go back to the pre-buy and the negotiation in the annual. Should a new prospective owner look at paying the cost of an annual as kind of an insurance policy? This is the 172 because most of us know what that airplane is. What does an annual without anything repaired that's found cost on a 172?
There is no annual without anything repaired.
Well, I'm saying if you're an AMP and I pay you to do an annual, I don't own the airplane. I just want you to look it over and do an annual. What's the
$1,800 to $1,000 plus whatever they find.
But
So
I
as a
wouldn't pay for an annual on somebody else's airplane. But what you do is you fly your A&P to that airplane and have him do a thorough pre-buy inspection. Pre-buy is different than an annual.
Different than an annual. Okay.
Yeah, and you might pay $1,000 to get that done, but it's better to pay $1,000 and not buy a bad airplane than it is to pay
Absolutely,
$100,000
okay.
and have a bad airplane.
Digitally. Logbooks thoroughly, pay him to do that, that costs $100, $200. Then that's a head start on the pre-buy. Then you know whether it's worth paying him to travel somewhere to look at it.
The other advice is if you get a good mechanic and you build a relationship with him, right, the pre-buy can become an annual once you buy the airplane, right? Because the guy's already invested time, he's developed the discrepancy list, right? So now you use that, you buy the airplane, and then you just roll straight into the annual if you buy one that is just expired or is expired, right? Often, if you set it up that way, you can save yourself some money because you're not paying two different guys to look at the same airplane. And secondly, the person you use to do the pre-buy should be an expert on the type of airplane that you're buying.
Yes, excellent point.
Like for example, Beechcrafts, their wing attach bolts, they sit in a little reservoir, and if the drain hole plugs up, which is real common, water collects, they corrode. If you don't really know Beechcraft, you get an A&P who's just done a bunch of 172s, they don't know those specific things to look for, right? Find somebody who's an expert on the type you're buying.
Let me put a plug in for Mike Bush again, a savvy.
Any other relationships that an owner might have to.
Let me just jump in. Here's another. Saved on the $100,000 airplane. But that's one strategy for, at least on the sales tax or use tax.
So to directly answer your question, people that sell you gas, right? People that sell you parts.
So I tip the line guys $5 every time they fill up my airplane. And I think about that, I go, okay, if I do that once a week, that's 50 weeks of $5. It's $250 a year that I've spent. That's nothing in the aviation budget, yet I have the very best service. Gas are like,
Never get fuel.
yeah, because they're. That's
I
right.
don't even pull the handle out. He's like this.
Start giving them $10 then.
The people that are gonna give you technical advice, so whatever your type, model, series association is.
Yes, join the Cessna Association or the Beat Association or whatever it is. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes, that's great advice.
And probably the most importantly for your club airplanes that are not Cessna, because seems like every CFI can fly every Cessna. I think there's probably some room for improvement there, but your CFI. So from our airplanes, the most important relationship we have is with our CFI.
That is so critical. That is so critical.
I
Yeah.
reserved one of his planes one time. He called me, he goes, "Who are you? Where are you going with my airplane?" Literally.
Seriously, I want to know where your kids go to school.
Right.
And yeah, my CFIs are my ambassadors. You know, somebody says, hey, I want to get checked out in this SR-22. The CFI is responsible for introducing him to the airplane and introducing single new guy you get, call me up. And then I want to meet you at the hangar. And that's probably what I did, right? I met you at the hangar and said, here's how you get the airplane out without rubbing off the strobes.
Why'd you bring a shotgun?
If you got a Cirrus or a 182 RG, that method works. What I do as an owner is I walk around the ramp. I'm there almost every day, and if I see a new name on the schedule, especially CFIs, I walk in and introduce myself to them. We got so many new CFIs that come every time. It's like every week I'm seeing new names, and you know, I try to let them know. You know, feel free to call me if you got questions about my airplane. Meeting somebody face to face helps. You also asked about if you're an absentee owner, how do you find one of these guys that wants to manage your airplane? You start with CFIs. Dan Davis does it for some people. John Barta does it for a couple airplanes, one of which he used to own. But you build that relationship with people around the airport all the time, i.e. the CFIs. You know, they might be willing to make a few bucks to keep an eye on your airplane for them.
All right, last question.
I was just going to say I fly Dave's airplanes because of Dave and his reputation. And when I fly Dave's airplanes, I turn around and Dave's there. I don't know what that means, but
he stalks people.
Yeah. That's because my wife doesn't. I don't like being alone with my wife. I hang out at the airport instead.
All right, can we go?
All right, thanks to all the owners for showing up, answering questions, and thank you everybody for showing up. And right, for the CFIs.